So for me, just to kind of close this thread, what Linda just said, the way that we transform chaos is with our creativity, right? We lasso that thing and we figure out how to put it through the lens of ourselves, and then we do something with it out in the world. And if we don't do something with it out in the world, it gets stuck in us. We wonder, we sit in front of screens all day, right? At work, we're on these calls, we're doing this kind of thing, we're on our computer. Then we get home and we doom scroll for hours. Then we watch the news and get furious at all the stuff that is happening in the world. All of that inbound, all of that with our body still, all of that coming in and just increasing an immense tension in us. And then we wonder why we're anxious and depressed. Like, our body has so much energy. And if you do not use that energy, it's going to get stuck. And so we've got to learn to use that creativity. Like Linda advised, that is another thing that can be really, really helpful there. So again, run that one. Just another thing to drop into your filter and decide, is that a thing that I might want to try that helps with this? Okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
You look 10 times lighter already. I don't know. I don't know, but I know that that's the truth. Okay. I am, I think, going to get into the pearl sequence. And this is, for clarity, this is different from the star pearl, which is a new thing that is coming out into the world right now. This is the traditional pearl sequence. So the pearl sequence is all about prosperity. And the first thing that I like to make sure people understand is that prosperity is not wealth. Okay, prosperity has many, many, many different parts and pieces to it. Meaning, yes, there is a financial, physical abundance component to prosperity. But also, for us to be prosperous, we must have relationships that light up our heart, people that we love to be around, things that we can go and do with those people that bring us tons of joy. We also need to be prosperous, a deep connection to God or the universe or whatever it is you call that thing. Because that connection feeds us on a deep, deep level. We need physical food, but we also need spiritual food for our causal body, which I had a breakthrough on causal body. There's a video coming about that soon. I was listening to, what's his name? Eckhart Tolle. And he said something that blew my little mind up. I'm excited to share it with you guys. If there's a causal body, what's the effect body? That's my little teaser. Okay, so I think you get the point. Prosperity is all of these different arms. Like when I used to own a business, I would sit down with all my employees and we would look at what we called the 6 F's. So it was like faith, fitness, family, finances. I can't remember the other 2 F's, but it's a balance among all of those things is what we're seeking. Prosperity is, I'll steal a keynote from the Star Pearl, harmony, right? It's balance. Whereas wealth is the exact opposite. Wealth is taking something and making it out of balance, right? Because if I have wealth, what that means is that I have an accumulation of something in some way, shape, or form. Most often we think about it as an accumulation in, again, physical stuff, right? Like money, for example. However, if I have wealth and I get weighed down by that wealth, well, a couple things. One, my unfair share has got to come from somewhere else. And when we realize that, our whole life starts to change. Another thing that happens when we get too much is we start to get weighed down, right? If you think about people, for example, that, billionaires that have a yacht and this house and that house and all these people that they have to manage that are in charge of those things and this account and that thing. They're constantly running around trying to deal with fires that pop up, trying to deal with things. So many people are like, oh, if I were just a multimillionaire or a billionaire, everything would be fine. I'm telling you, your stress would go through the freaking roof for most people. And there are some people that are destined to be multimillionaires, but the reason that those people have resources is so that they can be applied to service of the whole, not so that they can be accumulated for themselves. So Pearl sequence is about developing this prosperity on a whole. And where it starts is with what's called the sphere of your vocation. So if you look at your Gene Keys profile, that sphere is actually very confusing, or can be, for people that are newer. Because if you look at the profile, like if you have it printed out, it will say vocation there. However, that sphere for the Venus sequence is also the sphere of your core wound, which if you've done the Venus work, you know the core wound is the wound that we are born into this world with. It's also called the sacred wound. Okay, it comes from being separate from God. So there's nothing that happened in your life. This wasn't a trauma that occurred other than the trauma of being born into separateness. So we've got this deep, deep, deep core wound. And in the Venus work, we burrow our way backwards, right? We go from 21 to 14 to 7 to 0 to the womb in order to contact that wound. And once we contact it with our awareness, I train the light that I have, my inner awareness, that spotlight on that core wound. And probably for the first time, for many of us, it's the first time that we are actually willing to feel it, because it runs so deep. It makes us so uncomfortable that we will do anything and everything to not have to feel it. And if you don't believe me, just sit on a meditation cushion, even on your couch, don't care. Close your eyes and just sit there for 10 minutes and watch what happens. No distractions, no anything. And I promise you, you're going to feel some tension, some discomfort, something. That's this core wound, among other things. Now, with that awareness, we start to transmute that core wound. And that's why learning tools such as alchemy, using something like the Gene Keys, are so useful, because we've got to learn how to transform that shadow frequency and work with it. And remember, it doesn't mean that we get out of the shadow. Well, how can I word this? It doesn't mean that the things that happened to you that caused you to respond in a shadow frequency change. Meaning the exact same thing that you took as an insult to your being still happens. The point of this is not to stop that from happening. We are humans. Part of that is things happening to us that we don't expect. However, we do have a choice in how we respond to those things. And that's what it means to move from the shadow to the gift. The work here is not to change the outer circumstances. The outer circumstances will change, but if you make that the goal, they will never change. What needs to change is our internal state in response to those external stimuli. And when I do that, then I'm able to begin responding from the gift frequency. And that is how we transmute that core wound. And what our vocation represents is essentially, when we move into the higher frequencies, moving through it, is the engine that drives our service to the world. So the very thing that was our deepest wound, once transmuted, becomes the fuel, becomes the energy that we use to press out into the world and to help others deal with their core wound. So be careful. Vocation is not representative of what you are doing out in the world. Okay, this is internally the motor that drives you. So when you wake up in the morning and you have this moment of like, what's the reason I'm going to get out of bed right now? It's that, right? It's like I felt this suffering so deeply. I let it so far into me. I know what it means to suffer. I know what it means to feel that wound. And because I know what it means, I'm going to do everything in my power to help other people see that they are not that wound. So that is what the sphere of your vocation represents. Val, yes, my dear.
Well, I just wanted to talk about that a little bit for my own. This is actually the first time that I've ever really talked about my own personal depth. I'm always like, oh yeah, blah blah blah. But for me, this is really hitting deeply because mine is indifference. Mine is 16, indifference, versatility, and mastery.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm feeling that everywhere in my life right now, not just on my personal, like when you asked, because it doesn't matter, but when you asked, I'm living with my mom right now. I have to have my mom with me. And so it's been a huge challenge. She fell and broke her hip, and I'm like, my evolution, my biggest challenge is sacrifice is the city of that. And so I'm really speaking with that. But what I have decided in my life is for my prosperity, in my opinion, to work for me, then I want all of those pieces. I want to be able to honor myself when I go out in the world, And so I used to navigate, honestly, my shadow in the defense that it was also what got me through this fucking world. Because without that level of indifference, I never would have made it to where I am right now. There's no way. Like, I tried to kill myself. I was like 11. And when I didn't die, that was when I decided that I am going to have my purpose served the world, because why did I not die? So I decided in that moment, but that indifference still helped me, and then I go into versatility, and then I go into mastery. And to be honest, that scares the shit out of me way more than indifference. My shadow in this case is easy as fuck. Yeah, let's walk through with indifference. It's so easy, But what's interesting is that for me personally, and I know that it's not for everybody, but for me and my journey forward, I have to use this to honor what I do in prosperity, what I do, not just to prosper from my connections and my relationships and my relationship with my mom and my brother and the dogs and everything and my community and all of that, but also what brings me wealth, whatever that amount end up being, because I feel like if I don't honor this, then I'm not honoring myself, So I'm really working this whole pearl sequence. I am done working. And I'm ready to live. Let's put it that way. How about that? I'm done working. I'm done, And it's interesting because I'm lit now. I'm lit. I just found a little studio, and I have a storefront space that we're going to get to use for sound healing. Is the first event we have happening there on Thursday tonight. We have sound healing, you know, we're going to integrate all these different things, and it's beautiful. But if I don't do that, and so I'm so versatile, I'm like a kinesiologist and a Reiki master and a wellness coach. And now I'm adding corrective exercise to specialization, you know, to go on with my body work. I mean, all of this, but it's so crazy because if I didn't have that, then that wouldn't be what I can take into everything else that I'm doing. So I guess in my sense, that I like the idea of prosperity matching this wealth and prosperity matching, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where I'm at with everything in my life right now.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me just say congratulations. How freaking cool that you got your first thing tonight. That is awesome.
Thank you.
Second, yeah. So like our level of wealth, the amount of physical abundance that we have, yeah, it's the perfect amount, right? It's the perfect amount for us to serve our purpose. That's what we're going to be given, is exactly what we need in order to serve our purpose. And I think oftentimes what we forget is, to serve your purpose, you've got to be in a state of peace. You've got to have some ability to connect to joy. Right? Like if you are not in that state, you're not going to be able to be in your purpose. So of course you're going to be given the things that open your heart, that make you feel great. Like it's not like you're going to be an aesthetic because you've made this choice. And then Val, the other thing that I just want to call in here is just to be mindful with your mom there of the difference between, and Carol, and we talked about this with Carol a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, which is the difference between sacrifice and martyrdom.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I remember that conversation, and I'm totally, because I'm also like, let me just explain, like, this is what I wrote for, this was the questions you asked us, since we're going there.
Yeah.
Sacrificing my aloneness. That was the hard part for me. Having to share my space and time with my mom. But I'm attempting to enjoy the time I have with my mom before she passes. And I love her little shithead dog. I gotta put diapers on this kid. He's back here like,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
But no, that's what I'm saying is like, but I love him, you know? And I have my studio now, which brings me a place where I can go for peace and excitement. So it's all working out. And then when you asked, do we need help? My answer was no. No, because this process is full of healing and learning, and is a crucial time for me to grow. You know, and so I see that. And every single transaction I have with my mom, if I end up getting triggered by something, I'm like, okay, why? Why? You know, what is it? What is it in me? Because she's 70, she'll be 75 this month. There is not a damn thing I'm going to do to change her. So all I can do is change my interaction and what's inside of me. What is this that I'm supposed to learn from while she's here? Because this is all I got. You know, I only got her for a little bit longer. So yeah. So I totally understand, because it's not martyrhood.
Yeah.
Opening yourself up in such a beautiful way that even though it feels sort of like sacrifice, really it's beautiful. Can you hear him in the background, Jan? Is that
just a little, yeah.
Oh my God. Anyway.
Yeah, beautiful.
So,
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it's touching me very, very hugely right now. So I appreciate that.
And that's another part of this that Val really brought up is, well, first of all, you can't change anyone's mind. So as your vocation comes online and you do go out into service in the world, don't try and change people's minds. People will change their mind when they're ready to change their mind, but telling people what to do or think is a surefire way not to get people to change their mind. So that goes across the board. The way that you change people's minds is by living into your heart and let them feel that. right? And then their mind will change on its own. And then the other thing that I wanted to speak there is like that open-heartedness that Val talked about. That is a requirement before we engage in the Pearl sequence work. Because that's why the Venus sequence happens before the Pearl sequence, right? Because I'm taking my open heart and I'm going out into the world with it. And you better believe there's going to be people that you run into that are going to be difficult in your service, right? I had a mentor that used to say, the second you plant a flag, people are going to start shooting. And that's the truth. The second you stand for something, there's going to be people that stand for the opposite position. And you're going to feel that. And if your heart isn't open, what you're going to do is fight with those people. You're going to battle. You're going to get sucked down, and you're not going to focus on what it is that you're bringing into the world. You're going to focus on trying to control all the things that are happening around you. So we've got to open our heart first before we get into this pearl work. Okay, and then getting into the lines, I need to be careful because the Gene Keys reached out and we're like, hey, be mindful about what you're talking about here. So I need to be mindful about the lines specifically and going into like super big detail on them. But what I am going to do is tell you the kind of overall structure here. So if you're very new to the Gene Keys, you're going to see a number 1 through 64, a period, and then a number 1 through 6. The number 1 through 6, which comes after the period, is your line number. In the Pearl sequence, the keynotes that we use have a lot to do with business because it has to do with prosperity. So he stole some things from the business world. And in the sphere of vocation, I believe that it is like keynotes from, there's like the script writer, the producer, the director, like that sort of thing. And so, for example, I'm a first line there, which is, if you think about the keynote, the script writer, what that means is somebody at some point had to go within and had to make something from nothing. That's the first line energy as it pertains to vocation. Okay. There's another keynote. Is sales, does anybody have them up? Is sales one of the keynotes or is that for vocation? Sales is one. Okay. So sales, for example, is one that he uses for the fourth line. Now, this is not sales and how you would think about like selling something to somebody, right? This isn't like selling a good or a service. I've had so many people tell me like, I'm not in sales. Like this does not resonate at all. And that's because that's not what it means. What it means is you, exactly, Ian typed it out. You are selling your open-heartedness, right? You are selling love. You are selling an idea or a feeling that you believe would benefit the whole. That's it. Okay, so coming out of the sphere of vocation, our first pathway is one of my favorite pathways in all of the Golden Path, and it's called the pathway of initiative. So the pathway of initiative connects the sphere of your vocation to the sphere of your culture. And it's titled the pathway of initiative because in order to call down the spirits of grace that are going to help you in this endeavor as you embody your vocation, you let it fuel you, and you bring things out into the world, you've got to take action in the outer world. I'm constantly fighting this fight in a very loving way with the people that I work with. Everybody wants to map out everything, right? They want to plan for X, Y, and Z, and they want to get all the content that they're going to put together, and they want to put all the assets, all the videos, all the PDFs, all of that stuff done. And then when they're ready, when they have all that together, then we'll go out to the world. There's two problems with that. One, when you put that out to the world, that's the time in which grace is going to start. And so if you put it out expecting everything to come back, you just introduced it to God. It needs some time for things to come back to you. So that's one issue. But the other issue is you need feedback. You are not alone in this world or on this journey. Even as a first line, like yours truly, I need feedback through the process. I need to understand what resonates, what doesn't resonate. And with that feedback, I can shift and change and move. And the feedback isn't necessarily like, I don't shift so that I can please my audience. Be careful there. What I shift is the lens through which, or the language that I'm using to share the same message, right? So I'm not changing anything internally to me. I'm just changing how I talk about it. Because how I talk about things it really matters. It resonates with different people in different ways. Jan, what you got, my brother?
Well, it just hit me because Linda was asking me about the line 3, and then Lily was talking about it as well in the chat. So I was like, where I'm missing something here. And what just hit me is what I was missing is I have it printed behind me as well. But there, because it's the all up profile, it has the core wounds line 3 in there. So when we were talking in the chat about shame and humor, that's the core wound. Yeah, that just hit me like, hey, careful when we start talking about that. And when we talk about vocation, the line 3 is strategy implementation. So the thing is, we need to make sure we stick in the right sequence. At least that's the key thing that hit me like, hang on, that makes quite a difference.
Yes.
When you look at that. So I was just typing that actually when it hit me, and then I raised my hand as well. So Linda, this is for you as well. I'm not sure if you were clear on this. Lily was like, yeah, no, sure, no, got it. Well, yeah, you're playing with this a little bit longer than I am. But it just hit me like, there's a difference whether I look at my vocation from a shame humor perspective or from a strategy implementation perspective. A massive difference when we start talking about the whole taking the initiative and moving towards culture as well.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And that's why I said this is a confusing, or can be a confusing sphere with people. They're overlapping the core and the vocation.
Yeah.
So yeah, really, thank you for bringing that up and really being mindful. What you're asking essentially is the question at the root of spirituality. And so bear with me as I struggle for words to find an answer.
Can I go in for a sec?
Please, yes, save me, for God's
I'll
sake.
save you because I absolutely love that you asked this question, Lisa, because I've been contemplating this in the past few days and came to a breakthrough. So let me just share what I've been thinking about. I just quickly Googled, because I wasn't aware of this word solipsism either. But as I looked it up, it really sounds similar to the principle of mentalism, which is a hermetic principle of the law of the universe that is mental. So everything that exists is what you say is a projection of our own mind. And so I have been thinking about this recently, because how does that work? You know, that exactly what you asked, like that's a little odd. But basically what I have realized is every single interaction I have with other people is basically them being a mirror to me. And that's how I comprehend that the universe is mental. That doesn't mean that they don't exist. What that means is the person who I'm talking to is only a mirror to my own reflection, and it reflects back. Each and every person reflects back a different aspect of my light to me. So does that answer your question? So that doesn't mean that you can't believe that other people don't exist. They do exist, but every single interaction you have with them is actually a reflection of your own mind and not necessarily the reflection of their mind, because it's a mirror. So they will interpret your interactions a little bit differently, because to them, you reflect a different type of light back to them. And that was my breakthrough. I don't know if this answers the question.
Okay. everything in this realm is paradox. We're getting to the land of paradox. As we get deep into these core truth questions, the answer is always paradox. So on the level of our physical being, we can clearly see our separateness, right? We know that I'm me, you're you, you have that body, I have this body. There's space between us right now. Where it sounds like you're struggling is with the next of the subtle bodies, which is what we call in the gene keys the astral body, which is just another name for the emotional body. And the way that this emotional body works is it's just like our physical body. It's just a little bit further out, and its frequency, depending on how it's attuned, picks up on all the different things, all the different emotions that are in the astral field around us that match our frequency. And so that's kind of what Lily is talking about here, is depending on where my frequency is, somebody is going to hear me in a particular way, and or I'm going to see them in a particular way. But that way is not actually accurate, because it is intimately tied to your frequency of your astral body. So if you're at a lower frequency, you're going to see all the negative stuff, all the shadow stuff in the other. If you're at a higher frequency, you're going to see the gifts or the cities in the other. And it doesn't matter what they do or say. That does not matter. You see that no matter what they do or say, the bad or the good. Right? Somebody could do something amazing. If you're in the shadow frequency, you're going to see the bad. Somebody could do something terrible. If you're in the gift frequency, you're going to see something good. And so it sounds like that's where the struggle is here, is like, how do I know, like, what's me, what's them? Okay, so let's put a pin in that, and then we'll go to the next body is the mental body, which this is all about thought patterns, which kind of ties to this boundary issue as well. But I'm going to leave that one there. Kind of think of the same thing, but instead of emotions, it's thoughts. And then the next body up is what we call the causal body. And the causal body is the level of our soul. It's how we connect with God. It's how we connect to other people. It's how we see the unity in all things. And this again speaks to what Lily was talking about. The way that we serve as mirrors for one another is because we are all pieces of the same thing. So on this level, and this is why I say it's paradox, it is mental, right? The separation that we see is just us pretending. It's us in the illusion. It's what's called the Maya in the Eastern traditions, right? It's all illusion. It's all mental. It's all a projection of what's here. However, if you can get to the core of that person and then the core of yourself, what you'll find is there is no difference. I am you and you am I. And the reason that we are acting differently is because everything that has happened to us up until this point has been a little bit different. But ultimately, that underlying consciousness is exactly the same in you or in I. And so the boundary issue, really what people are getting at when they talk about boundaries is, how can I not let myself get sucked down into something that I don't want to get sucked down into? And the way that we do that is to raise our own frequency. If your frequency is high, again, it doesn't matter what anybody says or does. Okay, was that semi-helpful? Okay. It's a little loopy, but I think we got somewhere at least. A little bit. Okay. Yeah, and like Lily said, this is like a deep, deep, deep question. It really is. So good on you for contemplating it. Stick with it, because me saying it is very different from you feeling it. All right. Let me see if there's any other questions as I was making my way through. Speak to that. Line 4. Okay. So we were on pathway of initiative. Okay, so our taking action in the outer world is like the light that we shoot the spotlight up to the sky, and God's like, yes, there's one that's ready, and starts to like swirl all these energies down around us that then assist us in what we're doing out in the world. And the way that that assistance comes is through the path, or excuse me, the sphere of our culture. Now, before I go into the sphere of culture, the last thing I'll add about the pathway of initiative is it is analogous to the pathway of challenge in the activation sequence. So that is the pathway that connects your life's work to your evolution. So what that means is your vocation and your culture are in your conscious awareness. And they are energies that we can choose to work with and choose to respond differently. Now, if you compare that to, again, in the activation sequence, your radiance and your purpose, those are what we say is behind the veil. Those are more unconscious parts of ourselves. And the same is true. So in other words, we really, 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 really want to pay close attention to the sphere of our vocation and to the sphere of our culture. They're really important, especially the sphere of your culture. It's holding back a lot of energy. So now moving to your culture, what this represents is your fractal, the group of humans that begin to form around you as you take the initiative and you step into your soul's purpose. Now, where you need to be careful here, well, actually, I'll save that for a second. So we step into our soul's purpose. We speak out into the world, right? Our voice is a huge part of the pearl work. We've got to learn what our voice is. That's the next sphere, the brand, which I'll talk about here in a second, but we've got to learn what our voice is. We've got to learn how it resonates with people. We've got to be willing to be seen and heard. All of these things are like deep bits of work for the pearl sequence. So our vocation calls in other people. So again, I'm a line 1 there. And what he uses is organizational structure from business. So my line 1 is the entrepreneur. So this probably won't come as a surprise to you guys. Look at what I'm doing in the world, right? Line 1, the script writer. I sit down, I write down ideas for videos. And then line 1, the entrepreneur. I've created whatever the hell this thing is that we're all at right now, right? And the container of people that I work with, like, it doesn't get any clearer than that. Like, I'm a living example of how this stuff works. Now, line 2, for example, is partnership. And again, I'm not going to go through them all for the sake of, if you want the lines work, I encourage you to either buy the Gene Keys Pearl Sequence course, which if you do that, let me know. I'll throw you my affiliate link. That would be fantastic for me. Or buy the book that's titled Prosperity, which is all the text from the Pearl Sequence course, just written in a book. The downside of the book is you miss out on a lot of the additional materials that you get in the course, like meditations and webinar recordings, and it also like links in your specific gene keys in the course, which is, for me, was really, really helpful. So that second line is, yeah, like Ian said, is partnership. And so what this means is that your fractal is going to end up, you're going to end up working with, now you got to be careful here because these words aren't necessarily literal. So it doesn't mean that you have to work with another person. You might attach yourself to it. Most often is a person, for clarity, but it might be that you partner really intimately with another organization, and it's you and that organization that are partners in going out into the world. Or I've even heard it said, maybe you partner with Earth, and that is the partnership that you carry out into the world, right? So there's lots of different things that you can attach yourself to. Remember, you're not taking these things literally. but you are designed to thrive, to prosper in partnership. Now, just because I'm a line 1 doesn't mean that I'm destined to a lonely life, right? Look what's happening right now. I created this thing and now I get to connect. It's just like how I make the thing, how I bring this thing out into the world. That's what we're talking about here. So your fractal, your soul family starts to form around you, and what you'll find, the craziest, most synchronistic shit starts to happen. Like all these people that have the exact right skills come in at the exact right time so that you can do the exact right thing that continue to grow what it is you're offering out into the world. Like one of the things that I decided this year is that I wanted to do in-person stuff. Like for the people that I work with, I wanted to do like an in-person retreat. And also like it was going to just be, they could come and then I was going to open it up for all of you guys, right? Do something somewhere in a physical space that we could all go to. I decided that, and within 2 days, I had 2 different people reach out to me, one in Costa Rica, one in California, offering me their land. I shit you not. So this is what the culture starts to bring forth. Now, the next pathway is the pathway of growth. Well, actually, before I move on, questions on culture. I just was about to skip right over that. Any questions for what the sphere of culture represents, or your gene key in culture, which I may or may not be able to help you with, or just anything? Yes, my dear Carol.
Hi, my
Hello.
culture is, can you hear me?
Yes.
My culture is Jinky 4, line 5.
Just for everyone so that they know, will you share what gene key 4 is, please?
It is the shadow of intolerance, the gift of understanding, and the city of forgiveness.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And line 5 is society.
Yes.
And in the 2-day event, when Richard demonstrated this, it was in a position of leadership stroke protection of society as a whole. Well, my question. Yeah, I'm kind of not quite understanding this. I don't know really what my role is. I mean, I know that in the human design, my incarnation cross is the incarnation cross of Lax, which is collective. In the thing, the aspect of mutation, and it's about what was I going to say? Of prevention, and it's very much about the individual identity, protecting that within the societal frame. It seems to be. So I'm a bit confused about how that might manifest.
So,
and I'm also a reflector, so I feel like I'm outside of it, but inside of it.
mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, yeah, I'm kind of confused.
So, what is your understanding of understanding?
My understanding is to be able to, what do I understanding is to understanding? That my tolerance prevents me from understanding what is going on with society or an individual. So I'm therefore unable to forgive. But if I am tolerant, if I can open myself up in the attempt to understand, this is very heady, but I'm just kind of feeling into it, then it's easy to forgive. It's like my core wound is line 4, rejection, abandonment, and betrayal. And when I understood that members of my family held the same core wound and had those 4 lines, I was so understanding of where they were coming from and was totally forgiving of them, of their behavior. And it's that.
Bingo.
Yeah.
That's it. Ultimately, intolerance is an inability to see the core wound.
Ah, right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. We might be able to stop there.
Yes, by all means.
Right? Because so now tie that into the line 5 of society. Think about what it would do for the world if everyone could see the core wound of everyone else.
Oh, wow. When you went through in one of your sessions about all the implications of how the core wound of everybody impacts negatively on the world, it was just mind-blowing. So I think I need to really look about that.
Yeah.
But it is a kind of that whole thing, but it's also about individuals.
So just remember that, like, that it's all, that's an illusion, right? The individual
That's true.
collective
Yeah.
is illusion. Like, we are the individual. Yes, there's you and there's me, but ultimately there's Gaia.
Absolutely. Yes. It's both.
It's both. Exactly. It's both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Because
both.
for a society to thrive, the individuals within that society need to thrive.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome. Okay. Oh, I think that was a mistake. Now, I think I saw a comment. I got a 47, please. So the whole the just going into what does a gene key mean? I want to be mindful that a gene key means something different to all of us based on our life experience and based on what we've gone through and the big and little T traumas that we've had. And so me saying my interpretation of the 47th gene key, which I'll do here in a second on a very basic level, is not necessarily how you perceive the 47th gene key. And it might be the very thing that keeps you stuck. So that's why I'm so hesitant to, that's why I don't do profile readings, right? Like, I'm so hesitant to say what this means because it means something different for everyone. Now, have that being said as the caveat, the 47th gene key, which for the uninitiated is oppression, transmutation, transfiguration. That gene key is the gene key of alchemy. So it is about taking in the dross, taking in the negredo, the darkness that's all around us, which at a shadow frequency feels incredibly oppressive. It's like a weight that sits on our chest that stops us from being able to take a deep breath. But what that oppression is there for is to teach us, how can I use that? How can I use this energy that I've told myself is keeping me stuck, is keeping me trapped, is keeping me down, is stopping me from breathing and living in the way that I want to live and breathe? How can I take that and use it as the very fuel, transmute it into the very thing that is my greatest service, or at least of service to the whole? That's what transmutation is. And then transfiguration, when we do that enough, you've got to remember, when our frequency changes, this isn't some woo-woo like energy field. There is a part of it that's around us, but also in your physical body, there are physiological things that are happening as our frequency rises, meaning the mix of hormones that our glands are secreting are completely different. And when that happens, our physical form begins to change. So if you've ever heard of one of the ancient masters having the body of light, that is transfiguration. If you've ever heard of, the halo, transfiguration. Richard predicts that we are going to go clear, like our skin is going to go clear, literally. Transfiguration. P.S. The reason for that is that we're going to eat the sun like plants. So that's 47 in a nutshell. And as it pertains to culture, I would say, you've got to learn how to do your own internal transmutation, and then we got to learn, how can I start to transmute things for the collective? And when I start to transmute things for the collective, some really weird stuff starts to happen. Because God continues to open our heart to the level that is needed in order to do our work and serve our highest purpose in the world. And so when you take on an undue burden of the world's suffering, you get some pretty cool gifts. It's also really uncomfortable, but you get some pretty cool gifts, at least for now. The great change, as we are in this 55th gene key, is going to make it so it's not uncomfortable anymore.
Thank you. This is making me very emotional. Because for me, the 47 is a very focused item the last year, because I really want to help people with what I got through, but I always thought that I was suppressed by situations or by others, but the only one that was suppressing me was me. And to this day, still, I feel a massive fear for bringing who I am and what I do in the world that I've been seeing in my most shiniest self. So I was also wondering what then is a connection to the line 3, because there's unit, and I don't really know how to interpret that to this gene key.
Yeah, so the unit is like, think of that as like a small group. So like 3 to 15 people. So in other words, as you engage in this work, the core work that you do is going to be with another group of humans in that range. Like, so for example, in the container that I have, there's 9 of us right now. So that might be an example of doing work in a unit that's going to show up around you. And then what starts to happen is all these units, they connect to one another, right? This unit connects to this unit, connects to this unit, connects to this unit, and forms a network. And so your little fractal core group is going to have a massive impact. Like it bubbles out from there. And thank you for sharing your fear. It's important to own it. And here's my way of getting past that, because I have a lot of it too, is to remember that this is not about me. Not in any way, shape, or form. If I sit here quietly, nobody in this room right now has an ability to hear me and to shift the way that they think and see and move through the world. And that's what gets me out of my way, is just remembering it's not about me.
I've been saying that too.
Yeah. It'll come. It'll come. Be patient. Give it time.
Thank you.
Be gentle.
Patience is gene key 5. My
Yes.
son. That's
Yeah.
my son. Thank you.
You're welcome. Gentle. Okay. So that's culture. Carol, did you have something else?
Yeah, it's sort of become apparent over the last few years that love and unconditional love has been part of my journey and learning about that. I remember thinking about all the kind of things in my life and the people that I've been in, family and close relatives, etc. And I was contemplating murder. And although I abhor the action, the devastation of the lives of 3 people, the impact of family and grief, terrible, I still love that person. And those kind of paradoxes, and I still haven't resolved that. Well, I can't remember how I was going to relate that to the discussion, but it just felt important to say.
It is.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. One of the most powerful stories that I've heard from Richard, and I can't remember where it is, so my apologies. I've taken in so much of his stuff. He tells a story of a woman. It's in Africa. I want to say it's in Rwanda, but I'm not totally positive with that. And this poor woman, you know, a tribe came into her village and broke into her house and killed, and I'm going to get some of these details wrong, but the point will be the same, killed her husband and killed her son right in front of her and let her live. Fast forward to the end of the genocide, where people were going to court to be held to task for what they did. And the man who killed her husband and her son, they caught him. And he was on trial. And she went. And she had the opportunity to go and sit in the seat and say what she wanted from this trial. And it brings me to tears even just thinking about it. What she said is that I want this man to act as if he's my son. I want this man to know that he is forgiven. And just think about the power that that has. I promise you that that statement will reform that man better than 150 years in prison ever could. That's the power of forgiveness. It's also universal justice. We see justice as retribution. Justice is not retribution. It is not our job to enforce justice. The universe redresses the balance, always. What you say and what you do will come back to you. It's our job to love. Exactly. If you're not familiar with the term that Lisa just put into the chat, it's a Hawaiian term that I always mess up the pronunciation of. Ho'oponopono? Was that close? Who can say it the right way?
I think it's Ho'oponopono. Yeah. Sorry, Candy.
Say it again.
Ho'oponopono.
That's it? Ho'oponopono? Okay,
No,
whatever.
it's not that difficult. Jay, you can do this.
Ho'oponopono. Ho'oponopono.
Man, a bunch of non-Hawaiians trying to say Hawaiian word is hilarious. Thank you, everyone, for chiming in. Anyway, that word is love. I forgive you. I love you. I'm sorry. All in one. There's a beautiful song, if you ever have a chance on Spotify, if you just put that word in, that will change your life. I've told the story before. I sat down with my ex-wife on our front porch and played that song. And it's, I mean, one of the closest times in our relationship after our relationship had ended. It's a very powerful energy and song. Okay. That feels like a pretty good place, I think, for today. Yeah, thank you, Val. It didn't. I'm still in close relationship with her, very much so. I love her to death. She's the mother of my child. And we're together, not even just that, we're together a lot. Jan, what did you have, my brother?
Well, maybe this is controversial when I throw this in here. So if you want to get it out of the video, I totally appreciate that. But I just want to share an experience, because you started with how you were studying the gene keys by reading the book and listening to the audios. And that's where I started as well.
Mm-hmm.
And done a lot of that, watching YouTube videos, your group, a couple of other people, integrating human design, the whole shebang. There's a new technology out there that most of us are sort of like, yeah, don't go there, the whole AI thing, right? Which a lot of people are afraid of. I am just stunned at this moment by how much it knows when you look at contemplating the gene keys. I'm not saying to take it face value, careful. But if you just want to play with some of those gene keys, if you ask my gene key XYZ, whatever it is, in relationship to vocation, what shows up, right? I was asking it about just the other day about my culture and the whole thing. And at the end, I asked it, if you just look at all of this that we just talked about around my pearl, what can you tell me about my purpose, right? If my purpose being gene key, blah, blah, blah. And it comes back with my purpose 62.1. Your purpose is to bring clarity and order to the world through precise communication and logical thinking. This can involve roles where clear articulation and detailed analysis are crucial, such as teaching, writing, or consulting. Boom. Thank you. That thing doesn't know me, but that's what this is all about, what we do here, right? Vocation. My 55.3, combining your emotional awareness with your gift of precision, you can create work that is both deeply resonant and clearly articulated. This can help you connect with others on an emotional level while providing clear guidance and inspiration. This thing shouldn't know me, and it doesn't, don't get me wrong, right? But the language model behind it is so massive that if we use it properly, right? And I think this could be one way for some of us who are playing with all of this, like, hey, what does this mean? Reading the book is one thing. Definitely keep doing that. I mean, I'm still doing it, and I'll probably do it for the next couple of years again and again and again, just to see what else shows up. The audio is awesome. And there's a tool out there, which I'm using Copilot, which really, I mean, because this is part of my Microsoft 365 subscription, blah, blah, blah. But I'm amazed. I mean, give it a try, see what happens. And again, if you feel like this shouldn't be out in the open, I get it. But on the other side, I think everybody can benefit from this.
Yeah.
It's a great way of just contemplating, just saying, hey, there's another source. And the funny thing is, this thing grabbed all the sources, right? And see what it does for you. I mean, it can, I mean, maybe it just throws a thing like, wow, 2 words can make a whole lot of a difference here, but just find a way, play with it. Just have fun.
Totally. I love that. I love that. Right? Contemplation is just dropping different things into the bucket, right? And so if we have more things that we can drop into the bucket, great.
Yeah.
Great. Just don't confuse information with wisdom, right? Just remember, we've got to get below the words here. It's not about the words. It's what's behind and underneath the words. Okay. I'm gonna put a pin in it. We'll come back. We'll finish the Pearl sequence the next time we're on, which is in 14 days from now. You're welcome, Lisa. Thank you for being here. It's good to see you. 14 days from now is March the 6th. Caveat, I'm switching over to Zoom. So the next one is a different link. If you register, I changed the link over on the website. So the right link is there. And like always, when I send the email a couple days before, I'll have the Zoom link in it, not this link in it. So you don't have to stress too much, but it's going to be on Zoom just for those coming. That's because the work that I do with folks, I've moved on to a platform to kind of organize all the stuff that I put together for them. And Zoom works better with that platform than Google Meet does. So that's why we're making the jump. Speaking of, I've pulled in Courtney, who you guys have seen on the channel, hopefully. She is my partner who I moved through the world with, and also has been pulled into the container. So she's a neuroscientist. She's a PhD neuroscientist. She is working with people. So the gene keys are great, but we've got to get out of here and we've got to get into here, right? We've got to get down into our body with this information. So she's doing a lot of the embodiment and somatic work, helping to get past people's brain, which she understands deeply, and sucking it in. So we've got me kind of on the gene key side, her on the embodiment side. If that is something that calls to you, we've got 2 calls that we do every week. I do a really big onboarding. I am doing some in-person stuff with people, like I said. If that is of any interest, just respond to the email that I said or that I send, and then we can investigate. Emmanuel, you're welcome. I'm not sure how you say that. Koji, you're welcome as well. And yeah, thank you all for being here. Much love. See y'all next